Hello everyone, welcome to Sharmit. In this session, we are going to discuss about few more medical terminology related suffixes that provide some information about the medical term. But before we proceed further with this session, I would like to recommend you to please go and check out the previously released sessions first, because this entire playlist is in proper sequence and sync. So if you follow it sequentially, then it would be much more easier for you to understand the ongoing topic. Because for time being, we are just mainly focusing on how to use suffixes in medical terminology and how to identify the medical terminology through the suffixes. Clear? Alright, so let's get started. So here, I'm assuming that most of you are watching this session for the very first time. So just for them, I will repeat the definition for suffix. So suffix is a word. If someone asks you what is suffix, so you can simply say that suffix is a medical suffix is a word that is attached at the end of the medical terminology, and from there it provides some extra information. Okay, so that type of word is known as suffix. If you remember, we also discussed about the prefix. So prefix is something that is attached at the beginning of the terminology, whereas suffix is something that is attached at the end of the terminology. Clear? Alright, so I think this term is clear. Now we are good to start with the session. In session, what we will do, I'll firstly explain you the suffix with their meanings. Additionally, we will also discuss examples of it. Why? Because by referring those examples, it will help us to recall the things at the time of interviews and exam, so that you can easily find out the actual meaning of the medical terminology given in your question. Okay, and that is why we will also walk through a couple of examples related to those terminologies, so that you can easily learn and identify the things. Okay, alright, so let's get started. The first thing or the first suffix for the day is ostomy. What is ostomy? So ostomy is a suffix that is used when you want to discuss something related to surgical created opening. Okay, so that is called ostomy, surgical created opening. Ostomy is clear. For example, colostomy. Colostomy means surgical opening created from the colon to surface of the abdomen. Okay, so when there is a surgical operation for creating the opening from the colon to the surface of the abdomen, then in that case we will use the terminology that is colostomy, and this colostomy is composed with the suffix ostomy. Okay, likewise we have gastrostomy. Gastrostomy means surgical opening into the stomach, often for feeding tube placement. Okay, so in both example, one thing is common, that is ostomy, and you can see there is one more thing that is common here is the surgical opening. So you can see in both example we are talking about the surgical opening, and that is the reason we are using the same suffix, that is ostomy. Likewise we have another suffix, and make sure that while answering the question in interviews or exam, to identify these two terminologies separately. Ostomy is completely different from otomy. Okay, so always make sure that you read it clearly, otherwise you might have selected the wrong answer. So ostomy is used to denote something related to surgical created opening, whereas otomy is used for the incision. Okay, so if there is a discussion regarding the incision, so in that case you will use the otomy keyword suffix. Okay, so here we can see craniotomy. Craniotomy means surgical opening of the skull. So whenever there is a surgical opening of the skull, then in that case we will use the terminology that is craniotomy. Likewise we have thoracotomy. Thoracotomy means incision into the chest wall. So when there is an incision through the chest wall into the chest wall, then we will use the terminology that is thoracotomy, and here the suffix is otomy. Clear? Fine. Now let's move to the next suffix, that is pexy. Pexy means surgical fixation. So whenever there is a discussion regarding the surgical fixation, in that situation we will use the terminology that is HKHHM, which is nothing but a surgical fixation of a uterus. Okay, So whenever there is a surgical fixation of uterus, so you can see we are using the suffix that is pexy. Now those who have watched the previous session, they can find out one thing, that surgical earlier also we discussed about one suffix that is used for surgical fixation. Then why we are learning it again? Because in medical terminology there are some alternatives also. Okay, so make sure that like whenever you are learning, always try to find out all those alternatives also, so that in exam you will not get any you will not find any confusion. You can simply find out the actual purpose of it. Okay, so I think this part is clear, that what we are going to learn here. Now the next thing is for pexy we have another example, that is nephropexy. Nephropexy means surgical fixation of floating or mobile kidney. Okay, then we have plasty. Plasty means surgical reconstruction or repair. So if there is something related to surgical reconstruction or repairment, then we will use the terminology that is plasty. For example, angioplasty, surgical repair of unblocking of surgical repair or unblocking of blood vessel, especially a coronary artery. Okay, then we have blepharoplasty, that means surgical repair or reconstruction of the eyelid. So if a person is suffering from some eyelid operation, eyelid problem, and doctors perform some medical operation on it for the surgical reconstruction or repairment, then that thing we will call we will mention with the term blepharoplasty. Okay, for that repairment. Alright, so now let's move to the next suffix, that is meter. And I'm sure this is something that you all know, because this is most commonly used suffix, that is meter, device used for measuring. Yes, so whenever there is any device which is used for measurement, so in that situation we will use the suffix meter. For example, thermometer, device used to measure the temperature. Glucometer, device used for measure the blood glucose level. Okay, then we have opsy. Opsy means visual examination. So whenever a doctors or medical experts are performing some visual examination, then in that case we will use the suffix that is opsy. For example, biopsy. Biopsy means the removal and visual examination of tissue to diagnose the disease. Okay, so when doctors do the visual examination to diagnose a particular disease of tissue, then in that case we will use the terminology biopsy. Okay, likewise we have autopsy. Autopsy means post-mortem examination to determine the cause of death. Yes, so that is also called as autopsy, where the opsy is used for the visual examination. Okay, now we have last two suffix for the day, that is scope and scopy. Scope means instrument for examining. Yeah, this is also again the same commonly used term, that is scope. So here you can see otoscope means instrument used to examine the ears. Then we have microscope, instrument used to view the tiny objects or organism that is not visible to the naked eyes. Okay, so these are the two terminology where we are using the scope term, scope suffix, and it is providing the information related to instrument for the examining. Okay, then we have scopy. Scopy means to examine or visual examination. So here you can see we have alternative. We also discussed about opsy, that is used for visual examination. Likewise we have scopy. Scopy means endoscopy. Endoscopy means, let's see the scopy means something is related to visual examination, and endoscopy is one of the example of it, like visual examination of the interior of the body cavity using an endoscope. Okay, so that entire process is defined with the terminology endoscopy, where we are using scopy for representing or for providing the information related to visual examination. Then we have colonoscopy, which is nothing but a visual examination of the colon. Okay, so yeah, these are the all suffixes which I would like to share with you all in this particular session. Now my one request, please do share your knowledge through the comment section. Here we are creating questions for all of you. Today's question is, why do we use suffix ptosis? I'm sure like most of you already answered this question in previous session, but if you have not yet, please do share your knowledge, because it will not only help you for preparing your exams, it will also help other freshers who are preparing for their medical terminology. Okay, so please do share your knowledge in the comment section, and thanks for watching Tech Sharmit. We will learn new topics in the upcoming sessions. So yeah, that's all for today. See you in the next session. Thank you for watching Tech Sharmit.